There are so many things that I love about the fiber arts community, so let's talk about it. Hello, what's up? My name is Charlotte, also known as Every Stitch Counts, because every little bit in life matters. Here on this channel, I make content related to everything I do with knitting and fiber arts that I enjoy. I run a small shop where I sell handmade knitting notions out of polymer clay, and I do vlogs and other videos. I kind of just do whatever I'm feeling. Sometimes they're sit-down podcast style videos about all my projects, and sometimes you just follow me around for the day. If you're new here, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Maybe consider subscribing or commenting if you like what you hear. In today's video, I wanted to put together everything that I really love about the fiber arts community. I'm doing this because I've been seeing a trend online where videos come out about people's knitting pet peeves. I totally understand and get why a video like this would get made. I have mixed feelings about the trend as a whole that I haven't really completely ironed out yet. I am a bit conflicted about whether or not I think that they are, I don't know, the most positive kind of content to put out. I haven't really fleshed out all of my opinions on that yet, but I really want to hear what people love about this community. I firmly believe that what you give mind to, you give power to. And I don't know, something about making a video about all the things that annoy me, about patterns, designers, how things are written, things that people do. There's something about that just, it gives me pause, and I don't want to focus on those things because we all have pet peeves. We all have things that we find annoying or frustrating. And while it can be helpful at times to discuss and dialogue about those things, in general, I personally don't want to give my mind over to those things. I don't want to focus on those things. And so what am I going to focus on instead? I'm going to talk about all the things that I love about the fiber arts community and all the things that I think are great about it, because I think that it is full of just wonderful people. It's always different, and there's always going to be something new to learn. There's always going to be someone who does something differently that I can learn from. It's just generally such an open place that's full of openness, and I love that. And I think that I want to celebrate those things. I think we should all be focusing on the positive things. Without further ado, let's talk about some of the home runs of the fiber arts community. I love that in real life, when I meet other knitters, when I meet people in the fiber arts community, no one cares what yarn I'm using. No one cares. No one has an opinion. I've never seen anybody voice a strong negative opinion about someone using acrylic yarn or synthetic yarn. I'm just excited to hear and see what people are making. It's just not something that takes up much conversation. People are very interested in what kind of yarn you use. I'm always interested in the kind of yarn that they use, because who isn't always curious about the fibers that people are using for their projects, especially if I like the projects that someone has made. I love talking about yarn, and I love that I can see, someone has made something, then they say, oh yeah, I used an acrylic blend or I use a synthetic blend. I love that because it opens my eyes to things that are possible, and that, you can make really nice things with synthetic yarns, and you don't always have to spend, an arm and a leg to make a beautiful project. I don't think you should ever feel pressured to spend a couple $100 plus on material for a sweater. Of course, there's a time and place for that. It's fun to buy nicer yarns, but there are so many yarns that are just lovely to use. And I love when I go to a fiber arts festival or when I meet people at my local yarn shop, people just are curious and don't really care what you're using. They're just curious about what you're making, and it opens up conversation. I love that that's not at the forefront of what we usually end up talking about. In a very similar vein, number 2 would be when I meet knitters and crocheters in real life, no one cares what's on my social media. No one cares what I post on Instagram. No one cares, how many YouTube videos I have out, how many subscribers I have, or the quality of my videos, how I write my posts, how I use hashtags, whether or not I tag designers. No one cares about that. It never even comes up. I have never had that kind of conversation topic come up in real life. I love that because we live in a digital world and we can't deny that. And so much of our time now needlessly gets wrapped up in the opinion of other people online, the aesthetics of my particular page, and is my page getting views, and are people watching my stuff? Do people like the posts that I put out? And it just, it like gets in your head. You get to the end of the day and you feel like, wow, I can't enjoy knitting on this project unless I post about it, or I have to update people on the progress that I've made on my sweater. In real life, I've never had people care about that. No one is on me in real life being like, hey, you gotta make sure you post that project, or it didn't really happen. And it just isn't something that people care about. You could have no social media, but if I see somebody out and about knitting, or I see somebody with a handmade sweater, or if I just meet people at festivals and I'm chatting with people, it never even comes up. Social media, it never even comes up. And if I really think about the amount of brain space that I sometimes give to social media, and then the fact that it never gets talked about in real life, really gives me intense pause of maybe I should just stop worrying about this so much. And I just love that about everyone. Number 3 is a big one. I understand that this might not be the case for everybody. I certainly hope you've never had this experience. Me personally, I've never experienced it. But number 3 is the fact that I don't feel like there's really any gatekeeping. If I think about the sheer volume of people who have started knitting, learned to knit, learned to crochet, weave, any of the fiber arts hobbies in the last like 5 to 6 years, it's crazy what a huge spike in this hobby there has been. I certainly have never gatekept anything. I've never felt like anyone has ever gatekept anything or is trying to, keep certain skills on the DL so that they can make the best stuff. I just don't feel any of that with this community. I have felt that in my life. I think that we were all in high school once, and we all had friends who thought they were cooler than us and didn't want us to be a part of something. And that really sucks, and it really hurts, and it feels exclusive. It's not great, but I've never felt that in this community. I've overwhelmingly just been showered with openness and excitement and support and curiosity about how I do things and how you made that great sweater or how you made that top look that way. I think that that is probably one of our communities as a whole, our strongest characteristics. It is so open. The fact that I can go to, say, Maryland Sheep and Wool and see every single different kind of person possible, and all of these people intermixing and intermingling and just being excited and having a common ground of, hey, what did you make? How did you make that? What yarn did you use? And people are just genuinely interested in you. That has been very much my experience. I hope that that has been your experience too, because I feel like that's what I always say about the fiber arts community when friends ask about it. They're like, what are the people like? It's just a community full of nice people. And I'm just so happy to be a part of it and to be affiliated with it because it's just so open and people are just excited to teach and learn and absorb and get better every day. And that's something that I really resonate with. And I just love that. I think it's one of the best things about the fiber arts community as a whole. Number 4, this one I think is related to the fact that in general, I think our community is just very, very open. Anybody can try their hand at design. I think that that is one of the best things about this community, in addition to, how open it is. But I think that those two things are not mutually exclusive. I think in general, people are just very supportive and very open and excited when they see people that they know, people they like online or in person, trying their hand at something and trying to write their own patterns, trying to design their own garments and whatnot. And I know there's mixed opinions about this, but I think overall it's great. I think that it should be that way because anyone can try. There's no barrier to entry, really, especially with platforms like Ravelry, platforms like Instagram. You can just post your knitting and you can try your hand at design, you can write a pattern, you can offer it for sale, and heck, maybe someone will buy it. And then maybe those people who buy your first pattern will give you constructive feedback. You can make the next pattern better, and so on and so on and so on. Or you can just be an individual and you can see a need in the pattern marketplace that is there, and then you can fill that need. I really saw this with Rebecca Clow of the Creabea. I remember watching her podcast years ago before she started design. When she first started designing patterns, her big thing was she wanted patterns that were up to her standard of size inclusivity, that she didn't feel like she was seen in the marketplace. So she learned to design, she put out her first pattern, and now she is, I would say, one of the most popular designers. Like, she's very popular. Her patterns get circulated like crazy. Everyone and their mother has made a Tulsa tee. We've all gotten to see her grow. I've not personally made any of her patterns. I think my mom has made one of her patterns, but I think that is just a really cool thing to be a part of. Whether it is the kind of patterns that are being written, the number of sizes, the format in which they're written, the culture that they are influenced by, anyone can step forward and try to fill that space. And I think that that's amazing. And while not every single designer is going to fit into the mainstream, that may not be what everyone wants. Some designers are going to want to write patterns that are much more niche, and that's okay too. I don't think everything has to be in the mainstream all the time. The pattern designers that are in the mainstream, I kind of get why, but that's a different topic. And back to the base point of, I love that you don't have to get a 4-year degree. You don't have to pass this certificate. You can be a self-starter. And I think that is generally really good. You know, it puts more responsibility on the consumer in the sense that patterns aren't necessarily standardized by an overarching organization. I could write a pattern however I want to and however I think would be best, and to whatever quality that I want to. So yes, there will be mixed experiences in terms of the patterns that you purchase. That will be a different experience, you know, designer to designer. But I think that I would prefer that to the alternative, which is that there's all this barrier to entry. Just as even someone who works in corporate, the amount that people have to do to get of most basic of jobs is just insane to me. And I think that creates its own set of issues. And so I would much prefer a world where maybe there's designers and patterns that I wouldn't purchase again from, but that overall anyone can make their mark, anyone can try, anyone can learn and put their stuff out there and see what people say. And how else are we supposed to learn? I think that's one of the best ways to learn. So I'm all for that. I love that we have open sources like Ravelry, and I love that anyone can post on Instagram. And I think that, again, is another testament to how open this community as a whole is. And the fifth thing that I love is that all patterns are not written the same. I again think this is one of those things that it really depends how you think about this in your mind and the meaning that you attribute to some of these things. I have been really puzzled by many patterns in my life. There have been patterns that I have had to reread 5 times, right? And while that can be very frustrating in the moment, like most things in my life, the most challenging of things are what teach me the most. While those patterns and reading those patterns may have been frustrating, at the end of the day, I can look back at those experiences and I think that those are the ones that really pushed me just to make a decision. Maybe to ditch the pattern a little bit and to just decide, oh, I'm going to do it this way, or I'm going to fudge these stitches here, or I'm going to have to adjust this in this way because I don't understand for the life of me what this pattern is trying to say. I may not be inclined to purchase from that designer again if it was that difficult to read and understand the pattern, but I have to give it credit where it's due. And I think that it's been those experiences where I, one, have grown a lot. too have just had to make decisions, and that has given me confidence in the future to just make my own decisions and to adjust patterns as I go and not be so reliant on the pattern. And 3, it really makes me appreciate when patterns are written super well. I have sung the praises of Lily Kate France, of Lily Kate Makes many times, but I think she's a great example of patterns that are just written very well. I appreciate her designs and her patterns so much more because I have read and I have bought patterns that are difficult to get through sometimes. Is there a part of me that maybe thinks it would be nice at times to have all patterns written exactly the same? Sure, but then when I really think about it, I don't think I want that, because every time we create that kind of a standard, you're kind of limiting someone's creativity in a way. I just don't know that that level of control over how things are done or the terms in which people use is the answer to this problem. Maybe, oh, lady laid down next to the camera. Maybe it's just something that we chalk up to, it is what it is. Not all patterns are written the same. It's just taken as a learning experience, which is a privilege every day that we get to learn and be curious and have these kinds of experiences, because there's lots of people in the world who don't have the leisure time to get frustrated with a knitting pattern that they bought. And while I understand, some of people's critiques on purchasing patterns that have errors or difficult to get through, I think that overall, I still would choose and prefer that not everyone write every single pattern exactly the same. And so overall, that's how I feel about patterns being different from one another. Number 6 is the cultural diversity of knitting. Again, I've heard mixed opinions about this, but in general, I can appreciate that every single country essentially has its own form of knitting. I think you really start to see and feel the cultural diversity of knitting more once you start stepping outside of mainstream knitting designers that really take up a lot of the social media space, at least. Even if we consider them, if we look at country-specific yarn houses that are releasing patterns, or smaller indie designers that are from different countries, or even smaller indie designers within the US who are representing different groups of people and different cultures of people. It's when you start branching out and finding these different niches of people, I've personally really seen that culture's or that person's influence in their design. And that's just such a beautiful thing, I think. A great example of this for me is Sedna Yang. She's a Korean knitwear designer. I found her for the first time when I was putting together my 20 not boring knitting pattern videos. I just loved everything that she made. You could so see her culture in her design. Of course, she had some that were, I guess, what you could say more Western, but she had some that were very obviously Korean traditional clothing. Seeing that put into a knitting pattern was something that I hadn't really seen before. And so I started digging a little bit more and started looking around and looking for country-specific designers. And of course, when you find people who are designers from Japan, Korea, South America, Italy, all these different people have such a unique take on knitwear design, the motifs that they choose, the things, she did it again, and the things that they choose to put into their patterns. That to me is what's really fun, because it makes it different and it really exposes me to things that I'm not exposed to on an everyday basis, I live in Seattle, which I would consider to be a pretty diverse city, but it still is in Western United States. And so seeing people's designs and sifting through all the patterns and the designers and finding people who are just doing their thing and representing their culture and their family history is coming through in their design is really a fun thing to see. I may not make every single one of those patterns. I may not wear every single one of those patterns, but I can appreciate again that someone of such a different background than me shares this thing in common. That's a point of interest. That's a point of conversation and connection. And I think that that is just really healthy and a really good thing in a world where it feels just divisive, more and more divisive every single day. And I just really, really love and appreciate that about the fiber arts community. In the same vein as that, I think that knitting and fiber arts, and even probably sewing to an extent, it's also, I feel and have experienced it to be very generationally inclusive as well, because let's be so for real. Up until about 8 or 10 years ago, the only people that were doing knitting was pretty much your grandma. Or at least older people. It was not something that young people flocked to do. It was not the hot topic hobby that people were picking up. At least in my experience. I'm going to speak very much from my experience on this topic because I understand this is one that could be very different based on individuals listening. But in my experience, learning to knit, sewing, all that kind of stuff, those were things that my great grandma did. They were things that she taught my grandma to do. My grandma taught my mom to do them, and my mom taught me. My mom taught me how to sew, although I'm not very good at sewing. But my mom also taught me to knit when I was like 6 years old. Having that kind of connection is really special. I definitely knit the most and have taken the hobby the furthest out of all of the other grandchildren in my family. And getting to share that with my grandma and getting to hear her talk about her mom and the things that she made is just a really special shared experience. And we all can appreciate the time it takes to make these things, the skill that it takes, the resources that it takes, because anyone who makes anything by hand knows that the greatest cost of those things is the time to make them. I think that, for a long time when young people weren't continuing on these hobbies, they weren't carrying on these skills that maybe their grandparents just did as a way of life, you really lose out on that opportunity for connection and for appreciation of really your heritage and this person who is part of your lineage and your legacy. You are their legacy in a lot of ways. And I definitely really try to not take that for granted. I understand that, not everyone is going to have that same kind of experience, but I would encourage anybody whose parents, whose grandparents, family, if you're able to step into maybe any part of their world and share something like that with them where you can connect, I would probably encourage anyone to do that, because I think it's definitely one of the most special things in my life. And it's definitely something that I hope continues when I have kids. I hope that there's young people someday when I'm old who want to learn from me and want to do the things that I did. I hope that continues. So I love that about this community. I love that we can appreciate these things of old and things that, they kind of stopped and now they're being revived again. I think that that's just really good for connection. I think it's good for community. I don't know that there's really anything bad about it. And I love that. Number 8, probably a given, but I love that knitting is a social hobby. And I've talked about this in the past, that a lot of the times when I was a kid, I was knitting alone. It really wasn't something that I considered to be a social hobby because I didn't have friends who did it. My mom and my grandma knit and made things, and so I was always able to connect with them about that. But especially now, knitting has turned into a social sport. We have the online aspect. We have people posting videos, posting Instagrams. People are encouraging each other, commenting on each other's videos, generally giving support to people and being excited when people are making and trying new things. And then we also have all these festivals. Every single knitting shop that I've ever seen has some form of a knit night where people can come once a week, enjoy chatting with people and just working on their projects. I think that is something that people need more of nowadays. We're becoming more and more isolated, and knitting is such a great conversation starter. It's such a great entry point to connection. I cannot tell you the number of times that I've been out and about in the real world just doing my thing and I see someone wearing a handmade sweater, and I can so easily just walk up and say, "Hey, I love your sweater," or "Hey, hey, I love what you made. That makes them feel good because someone has recognized that they've made this by hand, and that's special when someone does that. You know, you can talk about the pattern, you can talk about the yarn. There's so many things that you can talk about. And I think the world needs more of that. I think people need more interaction, more connection in their day-to-day life. Knitting, crochet, fiber arts really provides a great format for that. Seattle has several monthly coffee and knit, coffee and craft clubs that have become very popular. Can't remember the specific name of the creator who started the big one, or the one that is becoming the big one. She has an Instagram channel. She makes reels, you know, funny life vlog type reels. She also has a YouTube channel. I think it's like Wild Fox something. Indigo Fox. Indigo Knits? What is it? What's your handle, girl? The Indigo Fox. There we go. The Indigo Fox on Instagram. She created this knitting social craft club that meets, you know, once a month at different coffee shops throughout Seattle. Some of the reels just showing footage of these events, there are so many people. There's gotta be like 100 people, 100 plus people at some of these events. There's more and more things like that coming out. You know, we have festivals every year. There's so many new festivals that have started. I just think it's great. It's great to be able to just have people show up to these things. They're typically pretty affordable. They can be decently accessible, close to any yarn shop. And if you don't have anything like that in your area, maybe consider starting one. I've never met a knitter who didn't want to go to a social event and be able to shamelessly knit or crochet or work on their project. I think there's more and more of that stuff happening and starting. You should definitely start it yourself if it's not in your area, because I think most people would really like it. There are definitely more things that I love about the fiber arts community. You know, I love that there's always something new to learn. There's always a thing that I can do when I take a trip. I love checking out local yarn shops wherever I travel, and the list is endless of the things that I love and appreciate about this community. I'm gonna end the video for now with those 8. I think those 8 were the big ones. And let me know in the comments what you love about the fiber arts community as a whole. And if you resonate with any of these things, I hope that whoever listens to this can appreciate and hear that a lot of these things, I have these positive feelings about them because it's my experience. And I understand that not everyone's gonna have that same experience. I certainly hope that everyone can share these things, that you've also experienced these things as I have, because I just love this whole community. And I think that it has a lot of great things to offer. And it's why so many people have started this hobby and have stuck with this hobby. You know, this isn't just a trend. I think there are many people who are now fully converted lifelong knitters. They didn't just pick this up during the pandemic. This is a way of life now for people, and I think that is just amazing. Let me know in the comments what you think and if you resonate with any of these. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. I really sincerely hope that you are getting to enjoy your summer and getting to make all the things that you want to make, do all the things that you want to do, and that you're just living your best life. Real quick note, I have released a new design of stitch markers. You can check out my shop through the link below, and that is fully live right now. I also forgot to mention earlier that I am wearing my Kylie pullover in the size 3 by Irene Lynn. I knit this up in Tin Silk Lena. I don't remember the color, and I don't have the tag anymore. I did list it somewhere in a podcast though, so you'll find it in a podcast. All right, with that, I am gonna sign off, and I will catch you all on the next one. Stay classy. Bye.